Success didn't arrive in a thunderclap for Maya Chen, it whispered in, step by step. At 31, she was the youngest senior strategist at Harman Rich & Co., one of the most competitive consulting firms in Chicago. It wasn't a title handed to her or paved with favors. Maya earned it the hard way, late nights under flickering fluorescent lights, weekends filled with strategy decks and stakeholder reports, and countless meetings where she let her results speak louder than her modest voice ever could. On the surface, she wasn't flashy. Maya wore simple blouses, kept her dark hair tied back, and never bragged about her accomplishments. But those who paid attention, like the firm's managing partner, Mr. Larrington, noticed her sharp analysis and impeccable follow-through. And so did someone else. Clara. Clara Dawes had been with Harman Ridge for nearly a decade, a known force in the operations team. She had a polished presence, a booming laugh that echoed in the hallways, and a reputation for closing deals with flair. In her mind, she had earned her place at the firm, and maybe even more. She'd always envisioned herself moving into senior leadership. Until Maya started rising. The moment Maya first earned lead responsibility for a Fortune 100 client, Pendleton and Unveiled, the air shifted. It was a conservative account, old money, old structure, old expectations. Maya had studied their style for weeks. Under her guidance, Harman Ridge pitched a full-scale digital revamp, something no firm had dared suggest before. The client bit. Then they bit again. Maya's approach worked. Suddenly, she wasn't just the quiet one who delivers. She was the new face of the firm's future. That didn't sit well with Clara. At first, it was small things. During meetings, Clara would chime in with just to clarify what Maya meant. And then rephrase Maya's clear ideas into jargon-laden monologues. She always brought extra printouts, to help, she claimed. If Maya had prepared 10 slides, Clara added 15 more and insisted they showed alignment. Maya noticed, of course, but said nothing. She believed in humility. And results. It wasn't until the Pendleton project reached its final stages that things escalated. Maya received an email from the client's CEO himself. Exceptional work on the data transformation model. Maya understands our vision better than anyone we've partnered with before. The email made its way up the ladder. It also made its way to Clara. That afternoon, Maya returned from lunch to find Clara leaning against her doorway, sipping tea from a girl boss mug. "Client favorite, huh?" she said, smiling without warmth. "Must be nice." Maya looked up. "Thanks. Let me know if you want to join the client debrief. Your supply chain notes were helpful." Clara laughed. "Oh, no need. You've got this under control." Clearly. It wasn't just sarcasm, it was possession disguised as praise. That evening, as Maya stayed late finalizing the Pendleton year-end proposal, Clara lingered in the office too. "I'm just catching up on invoices," she claimed, slipping into the print room. Maya didn't think much of it. Clara often kept strange hours. She had a reputation for being the last to leave, the first to talk about it the next day. But something felt off. Maya didn't sleep much that night. Her instincts, always razor-sharp in business, now nudged her uncomfortably in her personal thoughts. Something about Clara's tone, her eyes, the way she kept rephrasing success as luck, it all brewed together into unease. Still, she chalked it up to stress. After all, tomorrow was the big day. The Pendleton presentation would be attended virtually by the entire senior board, including the CEO, 2 VPs, and Harman Ridge's managing partner. Maya had been preparing this for 3 months. It wasn't just about a contract. If this pitch landed, she'd secure the largest client partnership of her career. And finally, a shot at the promotion she never dared say out loud. The next morning, she arrived early. Everything had to be perfect. She'd already printed the physical packets the night before, 20 copies of the presentation bound and labeled. She grabbed them from her desk. Everything looked in place. The digital file was backed up and ready to go on the shared server. At 9 a.m. sharp, Maya entered the conference room. The Pendleton team appeared on the large video screen, smiling and waving. Her team shuffled in and took their seats. Clara, dressed in a tailored red jacket, sat in the back, legs crossed, scribbling notes with exaggerated poise. "Let's begin," Maya said, clicking open the presentation folder. Then she froze. Every single packet, 20 of them, was blank. No title slide. No budget breakdowns. No analytics. Just white, untouched printer paper. She flipped through each one in disbelief. Laughter bubbled at the edge of the Pendleton call. One executive tilted his head. "Is there a delay?" Just a moment," Maya said, her voice tight. She turned to the screen to launch the digital file. It was gone. The folder on the shared drive? Empty. The backup? Also gone. The room grew still. A different kind of silence, tight, suspicious. Maya's chest constricted as she stumbled through a vague apology, offering to reschedule. The Pendleton team ended the call early. No anger, just disappointment. Behind her, Clara stood slowly. She passed Maya on the way out and whispered just loud enough. "Rough morning, huh?" Maya stood there, frozen. No words. No rebuttal. Just the realization, she'd been played. Set up. Sabotaged. And no one would believe it. Not yet. But Clara had made one fatal mistake. She thought Maya would break. She didn't realize Maya was only getting started. Maya stood in the doorway of the empty conference room long after the last chair had creaked back and the final polite apology had faded from the speakers. The packets still lay on the table, identical stacks of pristine, blank pages. 20 copies. No data. No graphs. No budget breakdowns. Just paper and silence. Her fingers hovered over one of them like she expected the content to reappear if she stared long enough. But it wouldn't. Because it had never been printed. Not by her. Not the night before, when she stayed until 10 p.m. Not after checking the file 3 times. Not after backing it up twice. Someone had changed it. Someone had replaced her real work with this, an elegant nothing. When she got back to her desk, she checked everything. Desktop? Empty. Shared server? Folder gone. Local backups? Corrupted. Even the cloud sync showed activity around 10:24 p.m. but the file name was blank. No record of who had accessed it. Just a gap. Like someone had cleaned their fingerprints from a crime scene. Maya sat still, staring at the blinking cursor on her screen. She didn't need a confession. She already knew. Clara. The pieces clicked into place. The way Clara had lingered near the printer. The flash of red blazer as she just dropped in after hours. The fake concern, the smiles laced with poison. It wasn't paranoia. It was precision. Maya had been played by someone who knew exactly where to strike. For a moment, all Maya wanted to do was march into her manager's office and explode. Shout. Accuse. Unload the fury burning in her throat. But she didn't. Instead, she opened a new PowerPoint document. From scratch. She titled it, Pendleton Proposal, Revised. Then she set her jaw and started typing. The next 3 days blurred into one. Maya worked from home, claiming she was regrouping, but really, she was rebuilding. Every graph, every insight, every recommendation, rewritten from memory, recreated with cleaner visuals and tighter logic. This time, she saved the file in 4 different places. Her desktop. A new encrypted drive. A password-protected cloud folder. And a secure email to herself. Let Clara try again. The more she worked, the clearer her mind became. This wasn't just about the proposal. This was about her name. Her reputation. Her place in the firm. And she wasn't going to let anyone erase that. On the morning of the 4th day, her phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Hello? Hi, Maya. It's Evelyn Ardsley from Pendleton. I wanted to check in. Maya froze. Evelyn was one of the firm's vice presidents. She had been on the disastrous video call. Thank you for calling. I'm so sorry about. Evelyn cut her off gently. I've seen your work. You're not someone who fumbles. I have a feeling something went wrong last week. Something you didn't cause. Maya's breath caught. I can't confirm anything. Not yet. Evelyn paused. Then, let's just say I'd like a redo. In person. With just you. And anyone else from your team who should be in the room. Maya smiled, small but sharp. I'd like that. She arrived at the office earlier than usual that Monday. The sky outside was still pink with dawn. She printed the new presentation herself, double-checking every slide, every caption, every logo alignment. Then she bound the packets and placed them in sleek navy folders. At 8:45 a.m., she laid them out in the conference room, perfectly spaced. At 9:05, Clara strolled in, coffee in hand, hair perfectly curled, acting like nothing had happened. She spotted the folders and raised an eyebrow. Trying again? She said sweetly. Maya didn't look up. No. I'm finishing. Clara blinked, thrown off by the calm. I guess some people need second chances, Clara added. Maya looked her squarely in the eye. And some people don't get thirds. At 9:30 sharp, Evelyn from Pendleton walked in with a quiet smile and a sharper look in her eyes. She shook hands with the team. When she got to Maya, she gave a subtle nod. A silent exchange. I'm here. I saw what happened. Let's see what happens now. The presentation started. Maya didn't fumble. She didn't pause. She didn't even glance at Clara. Slide after slide, she outlined the new approach, adapting insights for Pendleton's Q3 goals, proposing predictive metrics, and layering every recommendation with strategic clarity. When Evelyn asked questions, Maya answered before the end of the sentence. When her manager made a comment, Maya responded with a concise plan of action. By the end of the pitch, the air in the room had shifted. Respect. It was back. Earned. Not demanded. During the coffee break, Maya stepped out to take a call from legal. As she returned, she paused outside the conference room door. It was slightly ajar. Inside, Clara was speaking to Evelyn. She's good at what she does, sure. But client-facing? It's not her strength. Last week? That wasn't a one-off. She's fragile under pressure. Maya stopped in her tracks. Evelyn's voice came back, calm but cool. That's not what I've seen. In fact, I've rarely seen someone recover with that kind of grace. There was a long silence. Then Maya opened the door and stepped in. Clara turned, surprised. Maya simply said, "Shall we continue?" Clara didn't speak for the rest of the meeting. After everyone left, Evelyn lingered. "You handled that beautifully," she said. "Thank you," Maya replied. "And just so you know," Evelyn added, "I'll be following up with your leadership team. There's something they need to know." She didn't say what. She didn't need to. That afternoon, Maya received an internal email. Subject: Private HR meeting, Wednesday at 10 a.m. No details. No agenda. Just a list of attendees: Maya, Clara, HR, the department head. Maya stared at the screen for a long moment. This was it. The first ripple. Justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it begins in whispers. The morning of the HR meeting arrived cloaked in tension. Maya sat at her desk with a mug of tea she didn't touch. Her inbox blinked with unread messages, but her attention was elsewhere, on the clock, on her breath, on the weight of everything leading up to 10 a.m. The memory of Clara's voice, smooth and confident, trying to undermine her yet again in front of Evelyn, played on loop. But this time, she wouldn't stay quiet. She didn't need to raise her voice. She had the truth. And someone else had finally seen it too. At 9:58 a.m., Maya walked toward conference room 2B. She wore a navy blue blazer, the same one she'd worn at her first presentation to Pendleton and Unveiled. A quiet symbol of how far she'd come and what she was about to defend. Clara trailed behind, heels clacking confidently, a to-go caramel latte in one hand, her lips glossed into a perfect smile. She looked composed, maybe even smug. Maya suspected she believed this meeting was just a procedural misunderstanding. That HR would wrap things up with a soft warning and everything would go back to normal. What Clara didn't know was that the rules had already changed. Inside the conference room, 4 people waited. Lindsay from HR. Jonathan, the department head. Maya. Clara. The meeting began without pleasantries. "Let's begin," Lindsay said, her voice clipped but calm. She opened a slim folder. "We've received a formal concern from a client, Pendleton and Vale. Specifically from their vice president, Evelyn Ardsley." Clara's posture stiffened. They expressed that during a recent meeting break, a Harmon Ridge team member, by their account, Clara Dawes, made several inappropriate comments regarding Maya Chen, our lead on the account. Clara's smile tightened. "With all due respect, I think there's been a misunderstanding. That conversation wasn't formal. It was casual. Friendly, even." Lindsay raised an eyebrow. The VP quoted specific phrases, including "she folds under pressure" and "she's not client material." "Would you consider those professional observations?" Clara shifted in her chair. "I didn't mean them that way. It was more venting." Jonathan interjected. "You were venting about the firm's lead strategist to our largest client?" Maya didn't say a word. Her hands were still, folded neatly on the table. "And that's not all," Lindsay continued. "After receiving the client's concerns, we reviewed building security footage from the night before last week's failed presentation. Footage from the print room." A pause. Clara's eyes flickered. "You were seen entering the print room at 10:24 p.m. Maya's original presentation folder was on the top shelf, clearly labeled. The footage shows you removing the folder and placing a different one in its place." Clara opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Lindsay pressed on. "Your login activity also shows you accessed Maya's shared drive at 10:17 p.m. a time when Maya was logged off. The file was deleted. And you used a secure admin override code, which only 4 employees have. You're one of them." Dead silence. Then, Clara scoffed. "This is ridiculous. I've been at this firm for 9 years. You're taking the word of a client and a junior strategist over mine?" Jonathan leaned forward. "We're taking the word of a VP with no motive to lie, corroborated by digital logs and security footage. And Maya is not a junior strategist anymore. She's a department lead in all but title." Clara's mask cracked. "You promoted her already?" she snapped. "No," Jonathan said coolly. "But that's the direction things were already heading. Her work earned that, not someone's sabotage." Clara turned to Maya, eyes wild now. "You planned this. You made me the villain." Maya's voice was low, calm, and deadly precise. "I didn't make you anything. You did that all on your own." Lindsay closed the folder. "Effective immediately, Clara, your employment is terminated. Security will escort you out. Your access is already revoked." Clara stood abruptly, knocking over her coffee onto the table. No one flinched. As security arrived, she looked at Maya one last time, not with arrogance, but disbelief. Then she was gone. And the room exhaled. After the meeting, Jonathan turned to Maya. "I want you to know something," he said. "You handled this with more professionalism than most people would. You didn't lash out. You kept delivering." Maya nodded once. "I wasn't going to let her take my work away. Or my voice. That's why you're getting a promotion," he added. "Client relations lead. It's yours if you want it." Maya blinked. She didn't expect to hear it out loud, not so soon. "Thank you," she said. "I do." He smiled. "The client already knows. They're thrilled." That evening, Maya sat at her desk, staring at the corner office Clara once dreamed of. It wasn't empty for long. By week's end, a silver plaque was mounted on the door, "Maya Chen, Client Relations Lead." People stopped by to congratulate her. Some were warm, others awkward, perhaps remembering how they once chuckled at Clara's subtle jabs, or how they'd never spoken up. But Maya didn't hold grudges. She held herself to higher ground. A week later, she received a handwritten note in her inbox. The envelope was thick, cream-colored. The handwriting neat. Maya. What you handled with grace, others might have handled with rage. Your composure under pressure confirmed what I already knew: you're the kind of leader we want to work with. Looking forward to building something extraordinary together. Evelyn. Maya smiled and tucked the letter into her drawer. Not for pride. But for remembrance. She didn't rise by tearing someone down. She rose by standing tall when someone tried to tear her down. And now, she was just getting started. The first morning in the corner office felt surreal. Maya Chen stood by the window, coffee in hand, watching the city below stir to life. From this angle, she could see everything: the mirrored skyline stretching toward the lake, buses easing down rain-glossed streets, and the subtle shimmer of possibility in every early commuter's stride. Her new office was quiet. Not the hollow kind of quiet, but the earned kind: calm, confident, whole. The brass plaque on the wall read: Client Relations Lead, Maya Chen. 3 lines, silver script on a dark wooden panel. Unassuming. Unmistakable. She had never needed to announce her arrival. And now, she didn't have to. The week after Clara's termination had been an unexpected swirl of transition. HR handled the messaging professionally: no gossip, no scandal, just a quiet internal memo confirming a change in team structure. But news traveled fast. Whispers moved through departments like currents, shifting the energy in subtle but obvious ways. Some people looked at Maya differently now, with curiosity, maybe a little caution. Others with newfound respect. And some, like the junior analysts she used to mentor, now walked by her office a little straighter, a little prouder, as if her victory had cracked something open for them too. She didn't strut. She didn't gloat. She just worked. Her calendar filled up instantly. Follow-ups with Pendleton. New interest from 2 legacy clients who happened to hear about the recovery pitch. A pilot onboarding call with the tech startup Evelyn had referred, small now, but with international growth on the horizon. Maya prepared for every call with the same quiet intensity she always had: slides color-coded, questions anticipated, outcomes forecasted. But now, her voice carried more weight. When she spoke in meetings, people listened without second-guessing. Not because her title changed, but because she had proven she could stand through a storm without breaking. And her team? They followed her lead, thoughtful, prepared, united. One afternoon, just after 3 p.m., a timid knock sounded at her door. She looked up. It was Mia, the new intern. Nervous. Clutching a small stack of documents to her chest. I didn't want to bother you," Mia said quickly. "I was told to drop these off." Maya smiled and motioned her in. "You're not bothering me. Come in." Mia stepped forward cautiously, then paused at the desk, eyes darting around the office. "It's kind of amazing in here," she said. Maya laughed. "It's just 4 walls. The window does most of the work." "No, I mean, what you did. Everyone talks about it." Maya raised an eyebrow. Mia flushed. "I mean in a good way. Like, you didn't blow up. You didn't make it about drama. You just handled it. And now you're here." There was awe in her voice, something Maya remembered once feeling when she watched women she admired navigate storms with grace. "I heard someone say you were underestimated," Mia added. "But that it worked in your favor." Maya sat back. "That's true. Can I ask, how did you not lose it when it happened?" Maya thought for a moment, then replied softly, "Because I knew who I was before anyone tried to tell me otherwise." Mia nodded slowly, like she was storing those words in her bones. As she turned to leave, Maya said, "Wait." She stood, walked over, and showed Mia a better way to organize her documents: less clutter, clearer labels. It was a small thing, but it mattered. "Thank you," Mia whispered. "Pay it forward," Maya replied. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, Maya lingered. She sat on the small couch beneath the tall window, legs tucked under her, staring at the soft amber haze of the skyline. In the distance, the lights blinked on in waves, offices, apartments, street lamps, all part of the quiet rhythm of a city that never fully sleeps. She thought about Clara. About how ambition can warp into desperation when it's laced with entitlement. How a person can spend so long pretending to be in control that they never see when they've lost it completely. And she thought about herself. How the old version of Maya, the one who once second-guessed her seat at the table, would never have imagined standing here. Not in this office. Not with this piece. But the truth was, she hadn't changed. Not fundamentally. She was still the woman who double-checked her slides. Still the one who carried an extra charger in case someone forgot theirs. Still the one who believed that doing the right thing, even quietly, was more powerful than any spotlight. But now, she carried something new, too. Confidence, not just in her skills, but in her voice. A voice she refused to mute ever again. The next morning, an envelope appeared in her inbox, an old-school paper envelope with her name handwritten across the front. No return address. She opened it cautiously. Inside was a letter. A single page. The handwriting neat but rushed. "Maya. You made me look like a monster. I wasn't trying to ruin you. I was trying to survive. Everyone liked you better. I thought if I could just make you stumble, maybe I'd get seen again. I didn't expect you to recover like that. Or to turn the room against me. I guess I underestimated you too." See, Maya stared at the letter for a long time. She didn't feel anger. Or triumph. She just felt done. She slid the letter into her top drawer, beside Evelyn's card, and closed it. Some things didn't need a reply. Some things were just ghosts. In the weeks that followed, the company changed, subtly, then significantly. The office culture grew quieter, but sharper. Gossip slowed. Credit was given more intentionally. People started asking questions like, "How can I help?" instead of "How do I win?" And Maya. She became a compass for that shift. Not by lecturing. Not by commanding. But by showing. By leading the same way she always had, prepared, humble, and steady. Now, more than ever, people followed. Because they trusted her. Not because she demanded it. But because she earned it. It had been 3 months since Maya Chen stepped into the corner office. 3 months since the silence of justice replaced the noise of sabotage. And in that time, the shape of the office, and the people in it, had started to shift. Her calendar now included words like client onboarding strategy, executive leadership breakfast, and new hire mentorship. Her inbox was filled not just with client pitches but invitations to speak on panels, leadership conferences, and internal workshops on ethics and growth. The woman who once sat at the edge of every meeting now led them. But Maya hadn't forgotten what it felt like to be underestimated. She wore that memory like armor, not to stay angry, but to stay grounded. Because she knew something now that many people took years to learn. It wasn't the storm that defined you. It was how you stood still in it. It was a Thursday morning when she ran into Mia again. The young intern had finished her rotation and returned to campus to finish her business degree. But today, she was back, nervous and bright-eyed, waiting outside the HR department with a visitor pass clipped to her shirt. Maya had been headed to a finance check-in but paused when she saw her. "Mia?" she asked, smiling. Mia turned. "Oh. Hi, Ms. Chen, Maya. Sorry." Maya chuckled. "Old habit?" Mia nodded, sheepishly. "I'm back for an interview. They're considering me for a full-time junior analyst role after graduation. Entry level, of course, but still." Maya stepped closer. "You've got this." Mia smiled shyly. "You think?" "I know," Maya said. "Because you've already walked through the fire once." Now you just have to walk through the door. Mia beamed. I'll remember that. And Maya knew she would. That was the kind of moment that planted roots. Later that afternoon, Maya received a note from Marcus, one of the VPs. A leadership retreat was being scheduled at a private lake house in Wisconsin, a strategy weekend for the firm's rising stars. Maya's name was listed as a core facilitator. Her first reaction was a flicker of imposter syndrome, the ghost of her old self asking, "Are you really the one they want leading that room?" But the answer came fast and clear. Yes. She had led herself through sabotage. She had rebuilt trust with clients and teams. And she had done it without compromising who she was. It wasn't about being the loudest in the room. It was about making sure your words mattered when you finally spoke. That evening, Maya stayed a bit later than usual. The office was mostly empty. A few late grinders tapped away on keyboards, and someone down the hall microwaved something suspiciously fishy. She took her tea and wandered back to the copy room, an almost poetic habit now. The same space where her downfall had been orchestrated. She stood there a moment, watching the machine work quietly. A few months ago, she had stood in this exact spot and wondered how she'd face the firm after being humiliated. Now, she stood there with her name etched on the office plaque and the respect of the leadership team. But more importantly, she stood with peace. Maya reached for a fresh ream of paper, thinking back to that haunting moment, the blank pages in the folder, the silence of disbelief, the chill that crept up her spine when she knew she'd been betrayed. And then she thought of Evelyn's voice over the phone, calm and unwavering. What happened, Maya? She hadn't defended herself with anger. She hadn't retaliated with gossip. She had chosen the path that required the most restraint, truth wrapped in grace. On her way out, she passed by the shared workspace and paused. A small group of junior employees, 3 women, 1 man, were gathered around a screen reviewing presentation drafts. One of them glanced up and whispered, "That's her. That's Maya Chen." The others turned quickly, suddenly sitting straighter. One waved nervously. Maya gave a small wave in return and kept walking, her heart full. She wasn't a myth. She was a mirror, proof that integrity still wins. That weekend, she received a final email from Clara. Sent from a personal account. Long. Rumbling. Regretful. You made me look like the villain. I was never going to get noticed if I played fair. You were always their favorite. I just needed one thing to go wrong for you, and it did. I didn't think you'd bounce back like that. Maya didn't respond. She didn't need to. Clara had made her choices. And Maya had made hers. When the leadership retreat finally arrived, Maya found herself standing before a room of future executives, smart, eager, anxious to be seen. She opened the session with a simple story, not about success, but about sabotage. About how someone once erased her work, deleted her files, and tried to write her out of her own story. But also about how she rewrote the ending anyway. You don't have to outshine anyone, she said. You just have to outlast their noise. They scribbled notes. Some nodded quietly. One woman wiped her eyes. Weeks passed, and her story spread, not the scandal, but the strength. Other clients reached out. New hires asked to shadow her. Her calendar stayed full, but she never missed a one-on-one with someone who needed direction, advice, or just a reason to keep trying. Because the best legacy isn't about plaques or promotions. It's about who you help rise after you. And so Maya Chen became more than a strategist. She became a story. One whispered between interns. She got sabotaged and still made partner. One retold in client meetings. She handled chaos with grace. One remembered in quiet copy rooms. She never had to raise her voice to be heard.